everyone, and thank you again for joining us for another week of our NASEF Farmcraft streams. Today we have a handful of guests joining us today, so I do want to hop right into it. But before we get started, just a reminder that this Friday, the NASEF Farmcraft Preseason challenges are due. So we have a few that we're going to be highlighting today, but just know that you still have a couple more days before they are due. And then next week on March 31st, we are going to be officially launching our NASEF Farmcraft World. So today's the final teaser we have with our mayor of Farmcraft, Brian Dickman, who's joining us as well. So first, I'll let everyone around the group introduce themselves, and then we are going to be hopping into a special segment later today called Food for Thought.
All right, I guess I'll start. So did I jump in too soon again?
No,
Cathy's
no.
Are you sure?
Yes.
I was going to pass it to you anyway. But yeah.
You were. Well, why don't you start and pass it?
Okay, I'll start this time, and then I'll pass it to you. So my name is Erik Leitner. I'm a STEM and computer science instructional facilitator for Broward County Public Schools and a global Minecraft mentor, and of course have been working with the NASEF team to deliver all of the incredible things we've done for the past year now. It has been a full year of incredible Minecraft events and challenges, and I'm excited, of course, that we are in the middle of this one. So Cathy, I'm going to pass it to you.
Yay! Well, hello everybody. I'm Cathy Chao-Isaacs. I'm a global Minecraft mentor, involved with all of these Minecraft challenges with NASEF for the past year, which is crazy. When Erik made that reference, I really can't believe it. So my role, my goodness, I am a game design and development teacher at William Anna Middle School and Ridge High School in New Jersey, and I'm super psyched to be here. And I told all my students today about the fabulous Dr. Adam Cornish. So there he is.
Hello, everyone. My name is Adam Cornish, and I'm a policy analyst at the State Department for the United States government. Just to give everyone a quick reminder, we are the foreign affairs agency who are paying attention to a variety of different issues that are happening around the globe. I happen to work in the Office of Agricultural Policy, and so I'm really excited for Farmcraft to share what we know about agriculture with all of you and farming, and to hear your opinions and learn from you guys as well. So thank you.
And I'll go last here. So my name is Brian, also known as CleverLike. I produce content inside of popular video games as a way of engaging kids and communicating and creating experiences that you can't maybe access in real life. And so I've been challenged with creating this Farmcraft global competition world that you're going to play in Minecraft. And I'm really excited. I get giddy every time I play it. And maybe that's just me, but this is all the things we're going to talk about and learn about are implemented in different ways in this game. That makes it really challenging, really interesting, and hopefully a lot of fun for y'all.
And don't forget mayor of Farmcraft.
Oh yes,
we have designated you mayor of Farmcraft.
Yes, I preside over. I need a shirt.
I love your shirt.
We'll get you.
I think some of the things that make me especially giddy is looking at the Flipgrid submissions of all the different teams that have been submitting globally. So we do have a couple that we want to feature today that we have pinned. So I have them linked as well, Erik, but up to you how we feature these. So
I think I have them open in a window already.
Okay, great.
So I'm going to go ahead and pop that up, and we'll do a screen share if it likes me today, which it usually likes me.
So Brian's joined us for a couple of maybe all of our streams where we reviewed some past submissions. But Adam, it's great to have you on the stream today to take a look at what the students are doing with just the vanilla Farmcraft capabilities. So they don't have access to our world just yet, and this is what they were able to come up with for this week's challenge, which is selecting 2 drastically different biomes and farming for a community that touches on both.
Mm-hmm. And this one I feel like is the challenge that really steps it up and takes them right into, of course, what they'll be doing when they see Brian's world in the coming weeks, or I should say soon days. but we're getting there. No pressure, no pressure. But I wanted to share a few. Now, keep in mind this challenge isn't due yet, right? But since we had a stream today, we thought let's share some of the ones that are sort of trickling in as the week goes on that we've seen so far. And this gives us an opportunity to share more than we usually would, especially for this kind of final preseason challenge. So first up is the Eagles, which we've got here.
And, do you know where they're from?
You know, I was just looking that one up.
The Eagles
Sam?
are from Romania.
Romania.
Ooh, awesome.
Nice.
This is why I love this event already.
And they
Every
are
time I
competing
see
in the
those
senior
locations.
division.
All right, let's take a look.
Or are they speaking over it?
I believe they will be. I'm not sure
Oh,
why I'm not
okay.
hearing it yet. See if I jump
The
ahead.
Eagles.
Oh, there they
For
go.
this challenge, we created 2 farms. The first one is in a dry and sandy area with very little water and almost no rain. When we created the farm, we considered many factors such as the plant and animals that grow in such conditions. We planted carrots, potatoes, and watermelons because they grow in sandy soil. As for animals, we decided to have goats on our farm because we can feed them. In real life, we could make a farm in this area, but the price would be higher because we had to remove a lot of stones and rocks.
I love the pandas.
The second farm we created is in a very wet area where it rains a lot. We considered the weather when we planted, so we have crops of wheat, sugarcane and berries because they love water. We have bees on our farm and we found some species of sunflower that can grow in moist soil. In real life, it would not be difficult to make a farm in such conditions, and it would not cost very much. All we need to do is to find out the plants that love water. Some things that are missing from Minecraft are more plants that can be grown. For instance, we wanted to plant cactuses with flowers and berries in the sandy farm, but we had only decorative ones, or we needed rice, cotton or soya for the weathery soil that aren't any.
So I'm going to pause this one here and we'll just talk about this one for a little bit. Now, clearly they chose 2 very drastically different biomes, which is exactly what we asked them to do. And I feel like this team really took the challenge to heart because I feel like they went beyond just the building. They definitely did their homework. Adam, Dr. Cornish, I noticed you nodding your head sort of as you were watching and they were presenting a little bit. So some of the things that they were talking about, the differences between the 2 biomes, and of course the things that weren't in Minecraft, that they wanted to refer to, how much of that kind of relates to real world farming, right? So they were talking about crops being sort of biome specific, which is something that Minecraft does a little bit, but doesn't necessarily require, provided you have the right, needs for those plants in that area.
Yeah, Erik, you've actually said it better than I possibly could. I guess I would just say that I was nodding in agreement because this team has done such a fantastic job with their research and trying to apply it to the various biomes that they are developing their farms in. And I guess I'm just making notes to myself that as we consider how we might want to adapt Farmcraft, if we do it again in the future, we might want to bring in some more of the AC ideas, bring in a greater diversity of different kinds of crops, and really kind of use the students as our inspiration for moving forward. I'm mostly just enraptured by how beautiful just the farms from this one submission are, and I've been enjoying seeing them in others as well. Yeah.
Cathy, I always have to bring it to you because you've always got such good insight into what the students are doing.
I'm so good at talking over people. I feel like I'm still not used to that.
You and I are pros. Don't worry, we're pros.
All right. So I thought the farm was gorgeous. I also so I used to be a scientist, and I love the fact that like Adam said, that the kids did their research and they applied that research to this build. I think that that's so fantastic. So many times it's like, oh yeah, I'll just build this. And, we have many opportunities in Minecraft to suspend our perception of reality. And the kids totally did what they could with what materials there are in Minecraft. And, apply their research. So yes, those are words I love. So if any students are listening, I love research. Do it.
And again, it's one of those things that when we do these projects with students, there's always going to be things that you either can or can't do, or at least have to do differently in Minecraft. And I love hearing the thought process, right? So when you give us your submissions here through Flipgrid and you tell us why you made the choices you made, it makes it that much more powerful, that much more meaningful, because now we see your vision and we understand why you made the choices you made, which is so important to it, because choice is going to be a huge factor in what's to come.
Yeah,
so let's take a look.
That's my favorite part. I'm talking over you. That's my favorite part, is just getting to know what you were thinking. I mean, I always say, you know, in fact, I said it today. I'm like, you know, I want to know. No, what were you thinking? What were you thinking? Like, but I often have the other tone of voice also. So
exactly. All right, let's take a look at the next one. And I think this is a team that we've seen once before. And again, keep in mind, we don't have all the submissions yet. So we're just sharing some of the ones that have come in so far. But they still have time to submit, of course, for Preseason Challenge 3.
Cousin Farm.
So I think it's a good place to pause there, because they started talking again about those things that made Minecraft. So it's another team that obviously did their homework. And Cathy, I'm actually going to let you start this one off with what you saw there and what they presented.
Okay, so I loved that, I guess in the rainforest, they tried to conserve the water and use the water that they collected to do the harvesting. I couldn't tell what they did afterwards because I was so happy with the music and I was jamming. But I loved that. I mean, I loved that they had a storage area. I loved, I mean, what else? I mean, I loved like the video. So there were two kids involved there. Someone was walking and then somebody else was following them with the walkthrough. So I mean, I just love the system or the process. Like, how did you do each part, not just the building for me. And then this is super cool, the vertical farm. I think we talked about that a little bit in the meeting, one of our meetings, and I was looking that up. Oh no, maybe I don't remember, but maybe I was looking it up for my quest for the kids. But I'm fascinated with the idea of vertical farms where there's no space. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, the thing that
Cathy,
go ahead, Adam.
Go right ahead, Brian.
Okay. I don't want to get into a joust with you, you know. So the thing that I'm liking about these two is that they're pointing out like the disconnect with reality in Minecraft and the limitations of Minecraft, you know. So not that Minecraft needs to be like hyper realistic, but the fact of we're talking about like real world situations and their understanding, like, well, Minecraft doesn't have this, or Minecraft doesn't represent that. And I am liking that, because what I've created is in Minecraft, but is nothing like Minecraft. So you have to water regularly, and the water is sprayed, and it's not you can't just put a river next to every single crop. You have to spray the sprinklers, and you have to pay money for the water, and you have to fertilize the soil, and you have to deal with weeds, and you have to deal with the bugs. And so like the farm in the game has come to life outside of anything you understand in your normal Minecraft farming. And so that makes me nervous, because I feel like it's going to frustrate kids. But I love that kids are saying they're looking at reality, they're looking at Minecraft, and they see the disparity. And then there's going to be Farmcraft that sits in the middle of the two, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, very.
And I'm glad you bring that up, Brian, because really, at the end of the day, we want the students to have a better understanding of how reality fits, while certainly being aware that, you know, Minecraft has a certain set of rules that we existed even as you do the coding for Farmcraft. I guess talking about reality a little bit, I don't know if the students actually, you know, talking about what I like on each of these farms. In the rainforest, essentially, I was initially confused as to why they had everything so far up, but I think it's to get that water collection, but also one thing that they didn't mention is sunlight, and that's something that is obviously very important for plants. And in the rainforest, the foliage is so thick that you can't actually get much sunlight at the bottom floor where most of the soil is, and so farming can be extremely difficult, because the only way to really get that efficiently is to find a clear area or to make one yourself. And so the students took advantage of the reality bending situation in Minecraft to get that sunlight for their crops. The only question I have then at that point is, how do you get the soil all the way up there? But that's, you know,
that's a whole other logistical
That's
question.
Minecraft.
It's called creative mode.
So
that's called creative mode.
Exactly.
And you know what? That's something that they mentioned right here. You know, they talked about, and there was a point they made right here on screen, and I know they used text on screen rather than a voiceover, but they talked about, right, in fact, it's right here on the screen. Funny thing in Minecraft is they ignore most of the laws of physics, right? So there's how do we get the soil up there? And the water in this case, especially in creative mode, is unlimited, right? And we know that in reality, no resource is necessarily unlimited, aside from, you know, maybe solar during the day. But even then, there are issues and obstacles and things like that. And of course, just physics that get in the way. So I thought they made some really fantastic points. So I'm looking at the time, and I want to be mindful, of course, of everything we need to cover today. So we'll stop with sharing those two. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to revisit something we haven't been to in a while. And that is the original farm from our first stream that we kind of threw together. Where Adam, you were our guest on that stream as well, and we made some kind of connections. We started making some of these connections between Minecraft and sort of the farming practices, real world farming practices. But I think we can take the conversation a little deeper now, right? Especially bouncing off what we've seen the students give back to us, right? We've seen this information, and to be honest, I mean, I'm kind of embarrassed with my little farm now. Seeing what the students have done.
Oh, Erik, it's such a good farm. It's like
kind of quaint, you know, by comparison.
Farm.
That's
right.
right.
I need to hit escape so we can see some things in it.
Okay.
Escape.
All right, so let's take a look around. And if you remember, we had plotted out some land, and we had planted some crops, and we had an interior and exterior. And now we've got, obviously, our crops growing very well. Everything looks very neat and tidy on our farm now. But there were some things we wanted to make sure we made a distinction of. So when I first built this kind of farm here, I thought, just to make it kind of cute, we put some like horses inside the barn, and we've got some horses inside the barn. Hi, Cathy.
Hello, Erik.
So we've got some horses inside
I'm
the
ready.
barn.
Look,
What's that?
the horse is
Oh,
so happy
you've
to
set
see
one.
me.
You've set one. This one is happy to see you. So this one likes. What did you do to get this one to like you?
I have a carrot in my hand, but I have at my right at my disposal, I have pockets full of things that horses might like.
Okay, so
I know about carrots.
He's clearly your friend.
Oh wait, but I also
And now you're riding him.
it.
Kind of side saddle, but you're riding him.
All right. Wait,
So we could say, and this is, this is a word I can say comfortably, because we, even as we look around a Minecraft world, when we first join a Minecraft world, especially if we're in sort of these greener areas, if you will, we tend to see things just wandering around, right? We see horses wandering around, pigs wandering around. In fact, there is a horse wandering around. There's a sheep over there wandering around, but that horse is now like your buddy.
My buddy.
Right? Like he's clearly comfortable around humans, likes you as a human. And I think the word we would use for that is that it's domesticated, right? And we're kind of familiar with the concept of domesticated animals, but it's kind of, we're starting realizing that, if we have these plants, and some of these plants are not growing as well as we'd hoped, I guess. I wonder if someone's causing trouble or if we're just not doing a good job. But my question would be, domestication is something we often talk about in terms of animals, and this would be a good question for Adam. Is this something that we can take to other types of life, right? Have we domesticated things beyond animals, or is that a term that we kind of specifically apply to animals, like the horse that's following Cathy around with the carrot?
Well, now I have a golden apple. I'm trying all of them, but I don't. For some reason, if I right click, I'm jumping on the horse.
Maybe you have to do the squat trick, but
I was trying to. I don't know. I keep riding the horse. Oh
if we're transitioning,
like my puppy friend.
If we're transitioning to the Adam sequence, you have your cool new intro for food for thought. If you're getting ready for that, so don't forget to.
I don't want to
create that segue.
All right, so why don't we do that since this is clearly the Adam moment, and we'll go into that segue. Do we have that available? Is it in the? I think. Or are we just saying that out loud? Because
I don't know. It's where you have to look back into some imaginary room.
So Damien, our stream producer, is going to play the quick little intro before we get into it.
Sorry, I didn't look behind the curtain.
Okay. Yep.
So now we know.
Enjoyed.
Go ahead, Adam. Go ahead.
Yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the new food for thought. It's giving us some thoughts as we figure out how to best present that to all of you. And thank you all for having me here again today. And I think Erik kind of started us off by talking about this domesticated horse that is quickly becoming Cathy's best friend, wanting to follow her around and be ridden and everything. And so I guess I just want to bring us real close back to what domestication even really means. And that is to take a wild organism, in this case, an animal, and, try to find the traits that we find optimal so that we eventually have a horse that is strong enough and willing enough to be ridden or to help pull a plow or do other things that humans really would prefer them to do. And the way that's accomplished is years, generations after generation of finding those horses that are friendly, that are big, that are strong, and are and breeding them together. It's successive years and years of breeding that get us to these horses. And going back to Erik's question, he's like, are there other organisms that we do this with? Is it just limited to animals? And that's a great lead in, Erik, because a lot of Farmcraft is talking about these beautiful plants that we've got sitting out here on the farm. And I'm sure everyone is unsurprised by the thought that we didn't just find these perfectly round, or in this case, square watermelons in the wild. It took centuries actually of old farmers in the past and breeders time to actually to essentially domesticate and cultivate these particular types of watermelons over time, so that they were large, so that they grew well, and so that they were tasty. It took generation after generation after generation to come to this point. And that's what we have for all of our various plants. The thing to think about is just that nature doesn't necessarily always give us what we want right away. When you go out into the woods, you're not going to be eating a good variety of foods out there, plants that you find out there, because they don't have the traits that you necessarily want. They might be nutritious, but maybe they don't taste good, or they might taste really good and then you get sick later on. And so what breeders have been doing for at least 10,000 years, if not more, is they've been taking these wild plants and finding the ones that have the traits that they want and just breeding them over and over again. I guess very quick fact corner, you see these orange carrots we've got over here? Mm-hmm. In the wild, they're not orange, they're purple.
What?
And yep, that's
so what makes them orange when we breed them domestically?
What we are selecting for is something that's called beta carotene, but everyone knows it better as vitamin A. And I'm sure many people remember their parents telling them, eat plenty of carrots, they're good for your eyes, and they really are. They are so packed full of vitamin A that we really need to develop our proper eye function. And so definitely eat up. And just so you know, if you see a vegetable or fruit that's orange, probably a good portion of that is coming from vitamin A.
That is super cool. So I want to go back to the watermelon though, because you were talking about like this time frame of generation after generation after generation to kind of get these traits or characteristics from a living thing, in this case, a plant, that we want out of that plant, right? You can talk about size or the flavor or things like that. So in my lifetime, I'm sorry, children who are watching this, but I'm 44. And in my lifetime, but maybe they don't know this, right? Because of their younger age. When I got a watermelon as a child, if I was at camp, if it was summer, wherever, and we got a slice of watermelon, that thing was packed with very large, very hard black seeds. Oh, and admittedly, when I go to the supermarket now and we get a watermelon, none of that is there. There are maybe little white seeds, but I don't even have to necessarily eat around them. They chew up just the same way that the rest of the watermelon does. So is that a characteristic that is being bred over time through generations of watermelon? Because that has happened literally since I was a child.
Yeah, that's a really good question, Erik. The answer is a little complicated, but I'll see if I can break it down pretty quickly. So what you're referring to is you go to the store and you'll see a sign that says seedless watermelon. Mm-hmm. That's actually it's a way of breeding particular types of watermelon together so that when they have progeny, when they have those seedless watermelon plants, they are not able to reproduce themselves. They're actually a dead end. And it's a complicated process, but breeders have learned how to seize upon this and basically say, here's watermelon A and watermelon B. They can, when you breed them alone, they can reproduce for forever. But the moment you breed them together, they actually generate this non-fertile variety that doesn't have seeds, because the seeds are, of course, the next generation. Mm-hmm. But when you're eating watermelon, it's kind of annoying to have to eat around them. And so it's a complicated process, but it's fascinating.
Yeah, they were fun to spit out, though. Admittedly, they were. they were fun to spit out. So, there were songs I remember in camp about that stuff. So
And I mean, and just, addressing a concern we had when I was 6 or 7, no, if you eat a seed, you're not going to have it grow inside of you. They need sunlight.
Oh, thank goodness.
So,
Brian, I could see how worried you were when he mentioned that. I was
Actually,
say,
that's
Brian looks tense.
true story. I swallowed a watermelon seed and I panicked for a good solid day. I pictured some like Alien, and that movie didn't even exist when I ate that watermelon seed, but the trauma caused by that seed.
And it doesn't even occur to us that literally millions of people are eating this and it's full of seeds and you're the first one to ever make that mistake.
Yeah, dude. I felt it.
That's too good. So going back then to that comment of generation after generation. Now that's not something we see in Minecraft at all, right? I can't take these two watermelon and say I'm going to put these two together to see what kind of offspring they have, and then take that watermelon and all of a sudden it has different characteristics from this watermelon. So I can't do that in Minecraft at all.
Unfortunately not.
Right. In fact, I could do it though. Brian is a champ at this. Right, because we could do it with texture packs or mods though, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, totally.
So Brian, if you were going to change up these watermelons, you could totally do that, right?
Absolutely.
There's a lot of conditional statements if you made a game about genetics. If this green watermelon and this I don't know, orange.
Well, if you want to talk about different traits, there's yellow watermelon out there, Cathy. So the inside is yellow in color.
I'm going to the store right after this.
See, when you said yellow, I thought you meant the outside was yellow, and that kind of made sense to me because you see yellowish stripes in the green sometimes in the watermelon. In fact, we see it sort of here. But yeah, now the inside. Okay, so I need to find purple carrots and yellow watermelon. These are on my shopping list.
Well, I know about purple potatoes, but I didn't know about purple carrots.
Right.
So and actually, interesting fact for you guys: the Minecraft add-on technology has a genetic system into it that has dominant and recessive traits and results of breeding through generations, which is implemented on the pandas.
Interesting.
And so
I thought it was just random.
No, it's actually a whole genetics system that can be manipulated and used to program now.
That is very cool.
We can't add that feature into this version, but yeah, the Minecraft does have a genetic system programmed into it.
That is something I'm definitely gonna have to look into.
Oh yeah.
And so a question I might have for you, Brian, is how long does it really take to get to the panda that you might want that has the genetic traits that you're looking for? Have you played with that at all?
No, I have not, so I don't know. And it's definitely overwhelming. There's a lot of details, and it would be just like I met the programmer that programmed it. So the amount of research they did to create it, you probably would want to do a similar amount of research to, manipulate it and use it.
And I think that's actually a really good point, is that our breeders go through so much to get to these various traits that they want to achieve. I talked with actually a potato breeder last year, and he said that it took 15 years to get from the potato that they had that they really liked to add in just that one single trait that they were looking for. They were trying to get resistance to a particular type of worm, and they had a wild version of the potato that had that resistance, but the potato itself was really small and it didn't taste that good. And so what they had to do was they took the small wild one with that that worm resistance, and they just bred it with their happy, tasty potato for 15 years, over and over and over, always trying to get those optimal traits with that one additional trait. And they did it, but it took them 15 years. It was quite a slog.
That's
I would imagine so. Cathy,
go ahead. A lot of potatoes eaten.
So you know what, that brings up a question for me. you're saying this took 15 years. And obviously there was an important reason why it had to be done, right? Like in order to feed a community, if you've got a particular, well, in this term, let's use the word pest, like this worm that's invading crops or things like that, or destroying crops, then you need a solution to that so that you can continue to feed a community. What if you don't have 15 years, right? What if we have communities that are like desperate for food, and in 15 years, there's going to be certain, whether, starvation or loss of life and things like that. So what if you don't have 15 years?
That's actually a great question, Eric. And I'll actually use the fact that we're having rain right now to kind of in the game to talk about that, because with changing climate and different weather patterns, farmers are already starting to face different challenges where they're either getting more rain than they've ever needed before, or they're actually not getting enough, or suddenly insect pests are arriving and because of changed migratory patterns. And so farmers are having to need to respond extremely quickly. And unfortunately, they don't have the resources necessary to actually take care of that. And as you said, they don't have 10, 15 years to go through all of the successive breeding. And so a technique that some researchers use is called genetic engineering, where they can go in and they can introduce the traits that are needed or that the farmers want in a faster fashion. So within 1 to 2 years, instead of waiting 10, 15, 20, to just selectively breed over and over and over again.
And that would happen then more rapidly, because they'd be basically, for lack of a better term, and forgive me, if I'm being sort of ignorant of the science behind it, that they're creating the genetic code more rapidly for that particular species that already has the trait they're looking for.
Yeah, they're not necessarily creating, they're introducing. They're bringing in the genetic trait, typically a gene or a change to a gene that gives that trait that is desired. So let's talk about overwatering, because it certainly seems we're getting quite a bit of that in the world right now. I don't know about any of you, but I've killed plenty of houseplants by adding a little bit too much water too frequently. And that's actually bad for the plants. They are not able to necessarily control how much water they absorb. It also can introduce mold and fungus into the soil. And so what you could do is you could introduce a trait into the plant so that it essentially stops taking up the water too quickly, or it releases a compound that causes the fungus to not grow as quickly, or maybe introducing a trait that gives the roots a deeper hold in the ground. They probe deeper and they cling harder to the soil. These are all traits that could be introduced theoretically to a plant to avoid problems that happen with way too much water. I do notice that we have some rabbits over here. So what are the rabbits doing, Brian? And are they causing any potential problems with these beetroots we've got growing?
So I introduced the closest I could to kind of like scenarios in Farmcraft, which is pests, the living creatures that challenge the viability of your output, and weeds, which are, like we've talked about earlier, which are basically plants that grow better than than the ones you want, even if they're edible. So I put these here to kind of start, see if it introduces anything in the conversation. Like, yeah, the reality is like these rabbits would be going to town on this. No, they're not in the game, but in real life.
No, they're kind of just desperate for the carrot that Cathy is
carrot.
holding.
Oh, wait, here, let me take their, okay.
Well, they could also just be, could be very friendly and like to hang out with Cathy in general. I know most people do.
Right.
But
she clearly has a magnetic personality with the animals here on the farm.
But one thing I'll note, so both the rabbits as well as these dandelions that you see that are popped up in some of the farm, we just in general we call those agricultural pests, not because they're annoying or because they're mean. I mean, come on, look, the buns are just full of hearts at the moment. It's because at the end of the day, farmers don't like them because they cause problems with the actual crops that they're trying to grow. So with the rabbits, I can tell you I could never grow strawberries at home because as soon as just the tiniest bud of a strawberry would pop up, rabbits in the nearby woods would come over and eat them all. That's not, it's cute, but it doesn't really help me get strawberries at the end of the day. Meanwhile, like these dandelions, they're pretty, in my opinion, but they take up nutrients that your crops might need. So things that are sitting in the soil that are important for your crop to grow. They also take up water, they take up space. And if the weeds get big enough, they can actually cause shade over your crops and cause them to lose out on sunlight as well. So although they aren't really trying to hurt anyone, they're just trying to grow, farmers think that they're pests, or will sometimes call, especially plants, weeds, because they're getting in the way of the normal operation and growth of crops.
And I think that's a good distinction to make because, again, as a kid, I remember being told certain plants were weeds, and my assumption was that one, this was like a particular category of plant, right? Like this was, these were all grouped together as something called weeds and not plants or something like that. And that two, they were inherently bad, right? So for example, dandelions, I mean, I recall picking a bunch of dandelions, flowers for somebody and giving them, and they were like, oh, these are weeds. And I was kind of disappointed. I'm like, but they're pretty and they're flowers. And technically, yes, they're flowers. So I think it's an important distinction to make, right? Like if we didn't need something to necessarily be here, would it be a weed? Right? If we look over the fence, for example, in this area where we're not using this land as farmland, are these now weeds anymore?
And that's a great question. Weeds don't really exist in nature because it's just competition between different organisms that are trying to survive. Mm-hmm. And so they're not weeds, they're just another plant that is competing with all of the others to live and grow and to reproduce. So it's a fascinating question.
And then we could take it probably one step further, because I think people mentioned in this group as we were getting started, and I've experienced now, of course, seeing dandelions on menus, right? So seeing like a dandelions in salads and things like that at on menus where I never would have necessarily thought that. And so my question then is, if it's the desired crop, is it still a weed? Or, and I guess if it's the desired crop, then anything else that's growing there would be considered the weed and not the dandelion.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's actually a problem that farmers have to deal with to some extent, where they'll be growing soybeans in one area and corn in another, and maybe tomatoes elsewhere. And, seeds can be distributed by a variety of different ways, by the wind, by birds, by small animals. And that you might suddenly start having soy growing where you have tomatoes. At that point, soy is technically a weed. And so how do you get rid of it? It's a problem that farmers consistently have.
So then is it a bad thing? Like I was, anytime we drive, I don't even know what the crop is, but let's say there's a low crop and all of a sudden there's, one corn stalk in the middle of this field. So, obviously the seed got there somehow, but then, is you say it's a problem, but is it? I mean, would something happen crop wise if there were too many of?
Yeah, because the way that farmers typically operate, especially if they want to operate efficiently, they have machinery or tools that allow them to harvest a particular kind of crop. Well, if every 10 feet in the middle of your carrot field, you suddenly have this corn growing, well, that's going to interrupt and interfere with your ability to harvest the carrots, let alone the fact that the corn will be taking nutrients from the carrots that you're trying to grow. And so farmers have a variety of methods that they use to reduce weeds. I mean, the easiest one is to actually go out there, and I'm going to Erik's demonstrating for himself, but you can actually just go up and boom. Oh, I just destroyed some carrots, but you can actually go out and you can pull the weeds yourself. That's certainly one method, and farmers use a whole variety of them. But if we we've talked a little bit about genetic engineering, there's actually a way to well, first of all, chemicals can be used. I'm sure people have seen them in the grocery aisles where you can have a spray and it's called an herbicide. It's specifically designed to destroy weeds, except for it's plants are plants. It's really hard to generate a compound that only kills weeds because, as we've talked about, weeds aren't just one thing. It's really context dependent. What are you trying to grow? And so with GE, with genetic engineering, you can actually introduce a trait into your crops so that they're resistant to a particular kind of herbicide or a certain weed killer. And so at that point, you can grow your carrots if they've been given that resistance to weed killers, and you can spray them, and all other plants will not thrive in that area, and you'll just have your carrots alone. Now, there's conversations that need to be had about using these artificial weed killers in a system. But this is one way that farmers can get a little bit more dependability in their crops and in what they're growing.
So how do they, right? So we talked about, like, the farmer needing to decide what things to use, right, to kind of promote their plants to grow or to get the best yield, or even technically, like when Cathy brought up the corn stalk, right, growing in a field of other things. Who's making that decision, and how are they making that decision, right? So and based on what criteria?
At the end of the day, it's going to be the farmer that makes those choices, and they have so many different things to balance. They have to be thinking about water availability, about nutrients in the soil, about competition with other plants, about competition from cute buns that are going to come in and eat their crops. And so they have a lot of experience in this. This is something that sometimes they've been doing for years and years and years. And maybe they're brand new, but at the end of the day, they're trying to balance a variety of different factors to get the best crop they can. And so many farmers take different approaches. Some of them use GE, some of them use weed killers or insect sprays. Some of them go a different route and go for what is called organic farming. It really depends on the individual farmer, and that, the best person to talk to about how they make those decisions is not necessarily me. I am not a farmer myself. And so the best I can tell you is that we want to make sure that they have appropriate tools so that they can farm most effectively. But it's not really my place to tell them to say which tools are the best, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. And so, speaking of farmers, and I want to kind of steer this to Brian. Mm-hmm. As we introduce the final challenge, and Adam just gave us like a slew of decisions and choices that farmers had to make. Who's going to be in the role of that, and who's going to be making those choices?
Yeah, well, so this, if you look at the beets, I've kind of taken it to so you look at the bunnies, you think, oh, they're cute, they need to survive, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's it in its world. And then you have the farmer who has a business, needs to feed people and needs crop output. And you have these things that are competing, and then with the rabbits, I already see that there's baby rabbits coming. So they need to eat more, which means the crops need to start going away, which means there's not enough food for the bunnies, which means the bunnies won't be able to survive, which means we won't have enough food to feed the people, which means the people won't be able to survive, so these things are all connected, and that's what's really interesting is if you kind of allow yourself to think about this process and how do farmers have to get in there and they have to resolve the situation that creates the output that they need, because if they let it go, it's going to destroy itself. Like the population of rabbits are going to overtake the crops, and then they're going to have no food and they're going to die. So some intervention needs to happen. And so the real, what's cool about this competition is I'm not going to tell you how you have to do that. I can tell you how it's done today, but part of it is how does that make you feel, and how do you think we should handle it? And dealing with the reality of it, like not like, oh, the bunnies, they should stay alive, and then ignoring the rest of the reality, like figuring out like how would you solve the problem that in your mind and in your heart seems to be the best answer. Like that's what I hope the outcome of this to be. And so what the game is going to be doing is going to be introducing weeds that start to make your crops look sad, like like you're missing out, and now you have a decision to make. And do you want to spray, which would get it done faster and solve the problem faster, or do you want to do it by hand? What is in your mind? What is the real function you want to take? And same thing with pests. In our game, we don't have cute little bunnies, but we have cute little caterpillars that will eat your crops, and you have to figure out how you want to deal with them. And so like Adam is saying, he's talking about like how it's being done today. Like there's herbicide that kills plants. Like a weed is just an undesirable version of a plant in our mind. So that means it's not distinctly separate from something that we want in its mechanics. So using genetic engineering to make the desired plant tolerant to the herbicide so that all the other ones go away is a way that we deal with things today. And so the question is, like Adam was talking about, introduction of traits, like how would you look at a trait of a different thing, a different plant, and how would you say, well, I don't want to do it that way. I want to do it a different way. And how would you think about combining traits together to create something new that solves a problem in a way that's new and interesting and creative? That's so.
If I can just say very quickly, building on that, we actually have a Beyond the Game challenge that'll be coming up that directly addresses how students might try to tackle particular challenges and what traits they might introduce to a crop to address that challenge, putting themselves into the mindset of a researcher or a farmer and getting to that that piece. Mm-hmm. I noticed that we have a question from the chat. I have noticed in Africa that when we have hybrid crops, the shelf life is limited, especially vegetables. Why is it so? So I'll be honest, I'm not exactly sure what the question is referring to, what particular hybrid crops are being discussed. But as I think we've already had some touch upon, there's always trade-offs. You can't have one super crop that's able to address every single problem that we might be interested in. And so sometimes shelf life is not what we desire, is not able to be increased in the way that we might want. But I can tell you that a good variety of researchers and farmers have that on their minds. There are a variety of apples, several different kinds of apples, both those that have been generated from years of breeding, as well as some genetically engineered apples that have longer shelf lives and are actually called non-browning. If you noticed when you cut an apple apart, the inside turns yellow and then brown after a certain amount of time. This is because of certain chemical processes that happen when it's exposed to the air, to oxygen. Well, through different kinds of breeding, we've actually been able to get apples that don't brown over time, and they have increased shelf life as a response. So I certainly would be open to learning more about this particular question. So if the person who asked the question would like to send an email to the correct source, I would look at Sam for that. I could certainly try to get an answer for them.
Yeah, it's a really good question.
That actually kind of makes me think of a couple things here, because I was thinking about that part of the algorithm, which didn't really make it into the algorithm, but the idea of when you consider the whole full cycle of farming, that once it's produced, it needs to be harvested, it needs to be stored, it needs to be transported, it needs to be displayed and sold, brought home and eaten in a certain time frame. And so, like, it would be interesting to see if that the ones that don't last as long, maybe they're coming from farther away, or maybe there's something in the cycle that's different from the actual crop, the product itself. So that's my one thought on that. And the other thought, before we get too far, what is another thing that I considered is, like, so we have our crops being destroyed here, and we have our busy little sympathetic farmers that are planting the seeds and bone mealing the farm to make it look good again. But in the reality, like, you have a crop that starts to become destroyed and it's halfway grown. I was thinking about, like, maybe because it looks sad when the crop is destroyed, we should let people plant again. But it doesn't make sense, like in a huge farm, that you would have, you'd be 6 weeks away from harvesting a crop, and in the midst of that, you have one that is 12 weeks away from being harvested. It just doesn't make sense. Like, so when you have space that's lost, it's lost. You can't patch it back up.
Especially because of seasons.
Right.
You can't start growing corn in the middle of August. It's just you're not going to have enough time. But talking about time, I think we're getting close to the 5 o'clock hour, at least for the Eastern Standard Time zone where I am. So I think I'll turn it over to Erik and Sam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so again, awesome conversation as always. I love these conversations completely. It's always amazing to me just how quickly we can make observations in Minecraft and take it to, and it sparks real questions, and we saw that in the student submissions as well, right? As they were going through it, they started to have the realization, this is not how that works. Brian just talked about what doesn't work. I'm sitting here admittedly being the one who's bone mealing everything back to life.
I replanted also.
Oh, did you? Okay.
I didn't bone meal. I just replanted.
Oh, no, I definitely used the bone meal. But again, I don't think you can just throw fertilizer at corn and catch it up with the other corn that's already been growing for weeks and weeks.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought.
It's a very valid point, but since I do have to save this file, I like it looking pretty again. But again, this is purely pretty, right? This is not the challenge world in which I'm going to have to make the hard choices. So with that said, I would love to pass it back to Sam, and Sam can take us out.
So I want to thank everyone again for joining us for this stream today. Excuse me. I want to thank Dr. Adam Cornish for joining us for Food for Thought. And of course, Cathy and Erik for always co-hosting these sessions with me, and Brian as well. And actually, Erik, I might need you to close this out for today.
Not a problem. So I'm happy to do so. I have been right where you are and been caught, let's say, mid-sneeze or all sorts of other things. Live streaming is hard, as many people I have live streamed with, if they're watching this, would tell us. So again, thank you to everyone who's been on the stream. I know Sam kind of made mention already. A reminder that Preseason Challenge 3 is still open. The deadline for that one is still open. So those challenges those submissions can continue to come in throughout the week. I know we featured a few on this stream. We will feature more on the next stream, which will be very exciting because, of course, the next stream is the moment when the mayor of Clever, or I was going to say Clever Like, the mayor of Farm, the mayor, he's that too.
It's my new title.
Mayor of Farmcraft gets to
you
cut
need to
the
stand
ribbon.
in your Superhero pose.
That's right. So it's officially, you get the big gold scissors, you cut the ribbon, and you invite everyone into the town. So that'll be our moment. So that's very exciting. So that is what's to come. And that stream, of course, will be on Wednesday, March 31st at the same time as this stream. Thank you to Sam. Thank you to everyone on the call. Thank you to all those folks who make the streams happen and everyone behind the scenes and behind the curtain who we did get to hear this time. We'll see you again in a week.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye,
Thanks so
everyone.
much, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.